I didn't plan on looking at myself that long. But I did. Something about those airport lights. They don't lie. Not even a little. They show you everything you've been trying not to see. I remember standing there at the sink, water still dripping from my fingers, just staring like, when did I start looking this tired? My hair was off, not messy in a cute way, just rushed. My skin looked dull. And those dark circles? Yeah, they'd been there for a while. No fixing that in 5 minutes. I rubbed my hands on my jeans, but they were still damp. Cold. My fingers wouldn't stop shaking. Not just from being tired. It was that feeling when everything stacks up at once. And you don't get a break. You just keep going anyway. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the sink a little harder than I needed to. Just get on the plane. That's it. Nothing else mattered right now. Just get on the plane. Because if I missed that flight, I don't think I could have forgiven myself. Not after the call. 2 nights ago. I almost didn't answer. I was in the middle of a shift, orders piling up, people getting impatient. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket. I remember thinking, I'll call back later. I didn't. Savannah, you need to come, now. My aunt didn't sound like herself. That was the first thing I noticed. She wasn't crying. But her voice, it felt like it was holding something back. It's your mom. She's not doing well, the doctors said. It could be any day. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, in the middle of the kitchen, holding a plate I forgot to put down. There are moments where your brain just pauses. Like, it refuses to catch up. That was one of them. And then it hit. Hard. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just this quiet, heavy thought that wouldn't leave me alone. You waited too long. I had been meaning to go see her. For months. I kept telling myself I would after things slowed down. After I caught up on rent. After I figured things out with Noah. There's always an after. Until there isn't. I looked down at my boarding pass again, still creased from being folded too tight in my hand. I shouldn't even have had it. I couldn't afford that ticket. Not even close. Rent was late. Bills stacking up. Noah's school fees right around the corner. Every dollar in my life already had a job before it even reached me. If my aunt hadn't paid for it, I wouldn't be here. And somehow, that made everything feel heavier. But not as heavy as leaving Noah. That part stayed with me. He didn't let go right away. Just held on, like he thought if he stayed long enough, I'd change my mind. Mom, why can't I come with you? I swallowed. Tried to keep my voice steady. I don't want you to go. Yeah, that one stayed. I knelt down in front of him, brushed his hair back, kissed his forehead. I'll call you every day, okay? My voice sounded normal. Somehow. And I'll bring you something back. I don't even remember what I said I'd bring him. Didn't matter. Because what I didn't say was louder than anything else. I didn't know what I was going back to. I didn't know if my mom would still be my mom when I got there. And I didn't know if I'd come back the same. Ryan stood by the door the whole time. Arms crossed, quiet. We don't fight anymore, not really. But there's still something there. Something unfinished. I'll take care of him, he said. I nodded. That was enough. It had to be. Final boarding call for Flight 7A to New York. That pulled me out of it. I grabbed my bag and moved fast. Not thinking. Just moving. By the time I got to the gate, they were already closing it. Wait, please. I could hear my own breath. Uneven. Too loud. The woman looked at me. Really looked. Then she softened. You're okay. Go ahead. I don't think I've ever been that relieved over something so small. I got on the plane, walked down the aisle, counting rows without really seeing them. And then I saw him. I don't know why I noticed him first. Maybe I was just too aware of everything at that point. Or maybe he just didn't fit. Not in a loud way, just different. Too put together, too calm. like nothing was falling apart for him. I tried to lift my bag up, but my arms just gave out halfway. Great. I could feel that moment. That quiet embarrassment creeping in. Before I could play it off, he stood up. No hesitation. No awkward pause. He just took the bag from me, like it wasn't even heavy. Let me. His voice was low, controlled, slight accent. Not American. I froze for half a second. Thanks, I said, a little too quick. I sat down fast, hoping that was the end of it. It wasn't. Not really. Because even after he went back to his book, I could feel it. That calm, that steadiness. And something about it didn't sit right. Not bad. Just unfamiliar. Like I didn't know what to do with it. I turned to the window, trying to focus on anything else. Told myself to stay awake. Just a little longer. But my body was done. My eyes got heavy. My head dropped. I remember thinking, don't fall asleep here. But I did. I don't know how long I was out. But when I woke up, something felt off immediately. And the second I realized where my head had been resting, my heart just stopped. I woke up with this weird feeling, like something wasn't right. For a second, I didn't move, didn't open my eyes all the way, just stayed there, trying to figure out what felt off. Then I felt it. Warm, steady, not mine. My eyes snapped open. And, yeah, that's when it hit me. My head was resting on his shoulder. Not just lightly. I had been leaning on him, like that, for who knows how long. Oh my God, I shot up so fast my neck actually hurt, my face burning instantly. His jacket slid off me and into my lap, and I just sat there, frozen for a second, not even sure where to look. I am so sorry, I said, too fast, voice a little shaky. I couldn't even look at him properly at first. I just stared down at the fabric in my hands. It was soft, expensive, way too nice to have been used as my pillow. I finally forced myself to look up. He was already looking at me. Calm. That's the first thing I noticed. Not annoyed, not uncomfortable, just calm. And then he smiled. Not like he was amused, not like I'd embarrassed myself. Just warm, easy, like none of this was a big deal. You needed the rest, he said. Just like that. Like people falling asleep on him was something that happened every day. I blinked. No, I shouldn't have. Before I could even finish, he reached up and pressed the call button above us. A flight attendant showed up almost immediately, her eyes flicking between us like she already had a story in her head. Could we get some water? He asked. Smooth, casual, like he wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. I shook my head quickly. I can get it myself. Really? I know, he said, glancing at me, just slightly tilting his head. And there it was again, something in his eyes I couldn't quite read. But I don't mind. I don't know why that made me go quiet, but it did. Like he wasn't trying to impress me, wasn't trying to be polite, he just meant it. And that threw me off more than anything else. I sat there, holding his jacket, my fingers still gripping the sleeve without realizing it. It was still warm. That part stayed with me. I shouldn't have noticed that, but I did. I really am sorry, I said again, softer this time, clearing my throat. I didn't mean to, invade your space like that. He studied me for a second. Not in a weird way. Not intense. Just like he was actually paying attention. It's fine, he said. You looked exhausted. Simple, direct. And somehow, that hit harder than it should have. Because, yeah, I was. I didn't even know what to say to that. So I didn't. He seemed to notice, because after a second, he shifted slightly and held out his hand. Adrian Blake. His name caught me off guard. I don't know why. I guess I expected something more intimidating. I hesitated for half a second before taking his hand. Warm. Firm. Not too tight. Savannah, I said. Savannah Brooks. He repeated it quietly, like he was testing how it sounded. Savannah. That did something. I don't know what, but I noticed it. Nice to meet you. I nodded, suddenly very aware of how I must have looked sitting next to him. Faded jeans, worn sweater, sneakers that had definitely seen better days. And him, perfect suit, clean lines, expensive watch, like we weren't even from the same world. So, he leaned back slightly. New York, business or something else? I let out a small breath that almost turned into a laugh. Neither. He raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. The flight attendant came back with the water, handing his to him with a smile that lingered just a little too long, then gave me mine with a polite nod. I noticed the difference. Didn't react. Didn't have the energy to. Do you fly a lot? I asked, mostly because silence felt heavier than talking. He let out a quiet chuckle. More than I'd like. What do you do? There was a pause. Short, but there. Consulting, he said. International, that was it. Too clean. Too simple. Like he left something out on purpose. I frowned slightly. That explains the suit. He smirked. Just a little. And you? That question landed differently. I tightened my grip on the water bottle without meaning to. Family, I said. My voice came out quieter than I expected. Something's wrong? His tone changed. Not dramatic. Just softer. I nodded. Yeah. My mom. He didn't ask more. Didn't dig. And, weirdly, I appreciated that. We sat there for a moment. Just the sound of the engine filling the space between us. And I don't know why, but I kept thinking, this wasn't supposed to be anything. Just a flight. Just getting from one place to another. But something about him. The way he showed up. The way he didn't push. The way he noticed things without saying too much. It didn't feel random, and I couldn't explain why, but I had this quiet feeling sitting in my chest. That it wasn't going to end here. I'm sorry, he said. And this time, there was nothing playful in his face anymore, just something quieter. More real. I really am. I gave him a small smile and looked down at the bottle in my hand. It's okay. I'm just hoping I get there in time. That was all I said. But it felt like more than enough. Because once those words were out, I could feel everything behind them sitting there between us. My mother, the hospital, the fear I'd been trying not to touch too directly. What surprised me was that Adrian didn't push. He didn't ask what was wrong with my mom, didn't ask how sick she was, didn't give me one of those empty, well-meaning lines people say when they don't know what else to do. He just let it sit, and for some reason, that felt kinder than anything he could have said. So we sat there for a while, not awkward, not tense, just quiet. The low hum of the plane filled the space between us. Outside the window, everything was black except for a few distant lights and the occasional scatter of stars. It felt strange, being 30,000 feet in the air, with my whole life waiting for me on the ground. I hadn't expected this flight to be anything but something I had to survive. One more hard thing to get through. I definitely hadn't expected to end up next to someone like Adrian Blake, and I had no idea why that. The fact stayed in my head the way it did. A little while later, the flight attendants came through with coffee and snacks. I rubbed my face with both hands, trying to wake myself up. But exhaustion was still sitting heavy in my bones, the kind that sleep doesn't fix in one night, the kind that comes from stress, bills, guilt, all of it layered together until your body starts wearing it for you. Coffee? Adrian asked, noticing me blink like I was trying not to shut down again. I let out a tired breath. As much as they'll give me. That made the corner of his mouth lift. Just slightly. He flagged down the flight attendant, and a minute later there were 2 hot cups sitting in front of us. I wrapped my hands around mine right away, more for the warmth than anything else. The coffee was bitter and too hot at first, but honestly, it felt like life. Adrian watched me over the rim of his cup for a second, then said, "You have a kid, don't you?" I nearly choked. "What?" He smiled then, not smug, just amused enough to know he'd caught me off guard. "You were talking in your sleep." I stared at him. "Please tell me I didn't say anything too embarrassing." "1 or 2 things," he said calmly. "Mostly about school fees, and not forgetting to call Noah." My face got warm all over again. "Oh no." He let me sit in that for exactly 1 second before adding, "And you have that look." I narrowed my eyes at him. "What look?" "The one that says you haven't had decent sleep in years, and caffeine is basically keeping the whole operation running." I laughed before I could stop myself. A real one this time. Quick, tired, but real. "Okay, that's fair." I reached for my phone and pulled up a picture of Noah, one of my favorites. Him, grinning with his front teeth, still a little uneven, holding a plastic dinosaur in one hand, like it was some kind of trophy. I turned the screen toward Adrian. "This is my son. Noah. He just turned 6. Adrian took the phone carefully, like it mattered that he handled even that gently. He looked at the picture, longer than most people would have, not pretending to care, actually looking. "He has your eyes," he said. I smiled before I even meant to. "Yeah, and his dad's stubbornness." He glanced at me and handed the phone back. "You and his father still together?" I shook my head. "No, we divorced a couple years ago." I took another sip of coffee before adding, "It was the right decision, even if it didn't feel that way at first." He gave a small nod, like he understood that kind of thing better than he was saying. "That's never easy." "No," I said quietly, "it really isn't." For a second, I felt my grip tighten around the cup. Because some losses don't end the day the relationship ends. Sometimes, they just change shape and follow you around for years. There was a pause after that. Not a bad one. Then Adrian leaned back a little, stretching one arm like he was trying to work the stiffness out of a long flight. "I don't have kids," he said. "But my younger sister has 2. Every time I see her, she has that same look you do." I looked over at him. "So you have siblings?" "Just one," he said. "She's a doctor. Works too much." I smiled into my cup. "So it runs in the family." That got another quiet smile out of him, apparently. There was something about the way he talked that kept pulling at me. He was calm, measured, easy to listen to. But there was also a wall there. Not cold, exactly. Just controlled. Like he had spent a time, learning how much of himself to show, and how much to keep back. Normally, I wouldn't have noticed something like that. Or maybe I would have noticed and moved on. My life hadn't left much room for curiosity lately. I worked. I worried. I made lists in my head. I got through the day. That was it. I didn't sit around having conversations with handsome strangers in tailored suits. And I definitely didn't care what was going on behind their eyes. But with Adrian, I did. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe grief makes you lower your guard in strange ways. Or maybe some people walk into your life with a kind of stillness you didn't realize you'd been missing. And your heart picks up on it before your head does. The engines hummed steadily beneath us. City lights far below, flickering through the dark. I could feel him beside me without looking, too aware of him in a way that made no sense. He didn't fidget, didn't fill silence just to fill it. He seemed like the kind of man who was never rushed by anything, never thrown off balance, and somehow, That should have made him easier to ignore, but it didn't. It made me wonder what it took to become that controlled, and what it was, covering. After a while, he broke the silence again. So, he turned his cup slowly in his hand. What does Noah like, besides keeping his mother permanently sleep-deprived? I smiled before I answered. Dinosaurs. He's obsessed. Adrian's expression shifted immediately. Not fake interest. Real interest. That serious? Oh, very serious, I said. And just talking about Noah made something in me soften. He knows all the names, all the periods, what they ate, how they hunted. If you let him start, you're stuck for an hour. Adrian laughed under his breath. That sounds familiar. I looked at him. You were a dinosaur kid too? He nodded once. Completely. Drove my mother insane, with facts she never asked for. That made me laugh again. Easier this time. Okay. Now I need to know. What was your favorite? He leaned back, like he was giving the question the respect it deserved. Velociraptor, he said at last. Fast, smart, underestimated. I looked at him for a second longer than I meant to, because something about the way he said that didn't sound random, it sounded personal. And I don't know why, but right then, somewhere between bad coffee, cheap airplane seats, and a conversation I never expected to care about, I had the strange feeling that this man was about to matter to me more than he should. Underrated, he said, like it meant something more than just a dinosaur. I smiled a little. I should introduce you to Noah. He'd respect that choice. Something in Adrian's expression shifted, very quick, almost like I imagined it. And then, the plane dropped. Not hard, but enough to make my stomach flip. The kind of drop that makes the whole cabin go quiet for half a second. Then a ripple of gasps follows. The seatbelt sign blinked back on. Ladies and gentlemen, we've hit a bit of turbulence. My hands moved before I could think, gripping the armrests tight. I'm not usually scared of flying. I've done it enough. But this wasn't just the plane. It was everything. The call, my mom, Noah, the lack of sleep, all of it just hit at once. The plane dipped again. And that was when I felt it. His hand, covering mine. Not grabbing, not sudden, just there, steady, warm. Just turbulence, Adrian said quietly, like he was talking me through something bigger than the plane. Nothing to worry about. His voice didn't shake, didn't rush, and somehow, that slowed mine down. I looked down at our hands. His, larger, completely still. Mine, not. I didn't pull away. I probably should have, but I didn't. The shaking passed after a minute. The plane leveled out, the air in the cabin slowly settling again. Adrian let go first, like he knew exactly when to step back. Not a fan of flying? He asked. Casual, like none of that just happened. I exhaled slowly. It's not that. I shook my head a little. I think it's just everything hitting at the same time. He nodded once, like that made perfect sense. It did. I studied him for a second. There was something about him, something just out of reach. What about you? I asked. You seem like the kind of person who always has everything under control. I hesitated, then added, do you ever get nervous? He smiled, but there was something behind it this time, something quieter. Not often, he said. Too smooth, too practiced. Like that answer had been used before. I don't know why I cared, but I did. So I leaned back slightly, mirroring his posture without even realizing it. You fly all the time. You read books like that. I nodded toward the one in his hand. You calm people down like it's nothing. I looked at him more directly. But you don't really talk about yourself. A beat. Why is that? His lips curved slightly. I could ask you the same thing. I let out a quiet breath, almost a laugh. Fair. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable, just waiting. Then, unexpectedly, he sighed, ran a hand through his hair, messing it up just enough to make him look less perfect, more real. All right, he said, glancing at me. Let's make a deal. I raised an eyebrow. A deal? You tell me something real about you, he said, and I'll do the same. He held my gaze. No surface level answers. That caught me off guard. I thought about it for a second, then nodded. Okay, but you go first. He leaned back, tapping his fingers lightly against the armrest, like he was choosing his words carefully. I wasn't always like this, he said finally. I frowned slightly. Like what? In control. He glanced down briefly, then back at me. When I was younger, things were messy. A small pause. I learned early that if I didn't take control, someone else would. I blinked. That was more than I expected. He nodded toward me. Your turn. I hesitated. That wasn't fair. Or maybe it was. I always thought I'd be more than this, I said quietly. He tilted his head. More than what? I swallowed. More than barely getting by. I forced a small breath out. More than working nonstop and still falling behind. I looked down at my hands. I had plans. Real ones. A pause. Somewhere along the way, I just stopped chasing them. The words sat there, heavier than I meant them to be. Adrian didn't interrupt. Didn't fix it. He just listened. Then, after a moment, maybe you shouldn't have. I looked up. What? Stopped. His voice was calm, but firm. Maybe it's not too late. Something tightened in my chest at that. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure if I believed that, or if I was afraid to. The announcement came over the speaker before I could answer. We'll be beginning our descent into New York shortly. My stomach twisted. This was it. I glanced over at him. He had picked up his book again, but he wasn't reading. His fingers tapped lightly against the cover, like his mind was somewhere else entirely. Then he looked at me. Do you have a ride? I blinked. No. I was just going to get a cab. He nodded, like he expected that. I'll give you my driver's number. He can take you wherever you need to go. I frowned immediately. You don't have to do that. I know. Simple. But I want to. I hesitated. Because this felt like a line. And I wasn't sure if I should cross it. But then I looked at him. Really looked. And for some reason, I felt safe. That was new. I exhaled slowly. Okay. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card. Sleek. Minimal. I took it. And then, I saw the name. Adrian Blake. Blake Global Holdings. My breath caught. Because suddenly, everything about him made sense. And at the same time, nothing did. I didn't realize what his name meant. Not until I actually looked at the card. Adrian Blake. Blake Global Holdings. It hit me a second later, like something clicking into place that should have been obvious the whole time. I looked back up at him slowly, still trying to connect the man sitting next to me with the name I'd seen before in headlines, deals, numbers too big to even feel real. Business consulting? Huh, I said, dry. He didn't even try to deny it, just gave a small, almost amused smile. I may have simplified that a little. I let out a quiet breath, shaking my head, half frustrated, half something else I couldn't quite name. I should have been intimidated. I should have pulled back. But instead, all I could think was, what did I just step into? The plane had already landed by then, the usual sounds filling the cabin. Seatbelts clicking open, overhead bins slamming shut, people rushing like they had somewhere more important to be. But I stayed where I was, still holding that card, like it weighed more than paper should. You okay? His voice pulled me back. I looked up. He was watching me. calm as always, like none of this changed anything for him. You forgot to mention you're basically running half the world, I said, raising a brow. He chuckled softly. Not defensive. Not surprised. I find it's easier when I don't start with that. I couldn't help it. I smiled a little. Yeah, consulting sounds a lot less terrifying. He gave a small shrug. It works. I didn't respond right away, because right then, the realization was settling in deeper. I had just spent hours talking to him, laughing, falling asleep on his shoulder, like he was just a a guy, and somehow, he still felt like just a guy. That part didn't make sense. Welcome to New York. The announcement cut through everything. I exhaled slowly. This was it. My mom. The hospital. Whatever I was about to walk into next. And somehow, in the middle of all that, I had met him. The line started moving. People grabbing bags, stepping into the aisle. Adrian stood up without a word and pulled both of our bags down. Easy. Like it was nothing. He handed mine to me. Thanks, I said quietly, still not fully back in my body yet. He nodded, but didn't step away. My driver's outside, he said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Come with me. He'll take you wherever you need to go. I hesitated immediately. I should have said no. That would have been the normal response. But my brain didn't go there first. Instead, it went to trying to find a cab, dragging my suitcase through a city that doesn't slow down for anyone, going straight into a hospital, already exhausted, already carrying too much, and then, there was him. The way he had calmed me without asking questions, the way he never made me feel small, not once. Even now, I looked at him again, still steady, still waiting, not pushing. That mattered more than I expected. So I nodded. Okay. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Quick. Gone before I could read it. And just like that, I walked off that plane with a man who didn't belong in my world. Or maybe, I didn't belong in his. The moment we stepped outside, the cold air hit me hard. New York. Loud, fast, alive. Horns, lights, people moving like they had somewhere to be 5 minutes ago. I had grown up here, but after years in California, I had forgotten how much the city demands from you. It doesn't wait. It doesn't care if you're ready. His driver was already there, tall, quiet, dressed in black, opening the door to a car that looked like it belonged in a different reality than mine. I paused for half a second, then got in. The door shut behind me with a soft click. Leather seats, subtle cologne, the low, smooth sound of the engine. Everything about it felt controlled. Adrian got in beside me, like this was just another normal day for him. Where to? The driver asked. Lenox Hill Hospital, I said quietly. Adrian's gaze shifted slightly, but he didn't ask anything. The car pulled into traffic, smooth, effortless, blending into the chaos like it had done it 1,000 times before. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. I watched the city pass by, street after street I used to know, memories coming back whether I wanted them or not. Then he broke the silence. Is someone waiting for you there? I exhaled slowly. My aunt, I said. She called me 2 days ago. Said my mom got worse. He nodded once. How long? I hesitated. I don't usually tell strangers things like this. Definitely not men like him. A year, I said. She was diagnosed a year ago. I just thought. I stopped. Then finished it anyway. I thought I had more time. My voice dipped at the end. I couldn't help it. He didn't react right away. Didn't rush to fill the silence. You would have come sooner if you could, he said. Not a question. A statement. I looked down at my hands. Yeah. No pity. That's what I noticed. No sympathy look. Just understanding. You're here now, he said. Simple. But it landed. I swallowed. Yeah, I am. And for the first time since that phone call, I let myself breathe. The car slowed. Hospital lights coming into view. My chest tightened again. This was it. I reached for the door. Thank you for the ride, I said. And right before I stepped out, he said my name. Savannah. I had already reached for the door when he said my name. I turned back. And something in his face was different this time. Not distant. Not controlled. Just direct. If you need anything, anything at all, call me. For a second, I didn't know what to say. Adrian, you don't have to. I know, he cut in, calm as always. I want to. That stopped me. Because I've spent years figuring things out on my own. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. And when you live like that long enough, you stop expecting help. Even when it's right in front of you. I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. So I nodded. Okay. He held my gaze a second longer, then reached into his jacket and pulled out another card. This one's my personal number. I hesitated, just for a beat, then took it. Our fingers brushed for a split second, and I don't know why, but I noticed that. Take care of yourself, Savannah. I nodded again, stepped out, and shut the door behind me. I could feel him watching me, but I didn't turn around, because something told me this wasn't the last time our paths were crossing, not even close. The hospital doors slid open, and everything changed. The smell hit first. Antiseptic. Too clean. Too sharp. The kind of smell that doesn't let you forget where you are. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. People sitting too still. Too quiet. I scanned the room. Heart already picking up. Then I saw her. Aunt Marie. She looked smaller than I remembered. Tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. When she saw me, her face softened immediately. Savannah. Thank God. She pulled me into a hug before I could say anything. Tight. Like she needed it just as much as I did. How is she? I asked, my voice lower than I expected. Marie exhaled slowly. She's stable. For now. Last night was rough. But she made it through. I felt something in my chest loosen. Just a little. Not relief. But enough to breathe again. Can I see her? She nodded. Yeah. Come on. We walked down the hallway. Nurses passing by. Machines beeping somewhere in the distance. Voices kept low like the whole place had agreed not to be too loud. Every step felt heavier than the last. Then we stopped. The room was right there. My hand rested on the door, but I didn't push it open right away. I wasn't ready. But I did it anyway. My mom looked smaller. That was the first thing I noticed. Like life had been slowly taking pieces of her. The woman who raised me, who never looked fragile a day in her life. Now she did. Mum. My voice barely came out. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. Then she saw me, and she smiled. Savannah. You came. That broke something in me. I crossed the room fast, took her hand. Of course I came. My throat tightened, but I kept going. I'm sorry. I should have been here sooner. She squeezed my hand, weak, but there. You're here now, she whispered. That's enough. I sat there, holding her hand. And for the first time since that call, I stopped running in my head. Hours passed. I didn't even notice how many. At some point, I stepped outside. The cold air hit my face. Sharp. Real. I stood there for a second, just breathing. Then, I pulled out my phone without thinking, and saw his name. Adrian. Just checking in. How's your mom? I stared at the screen longer than I meant to, because it caught me off guard. He didn't have to do that. He barely knew me. But he did anyway. I typed slowly. She's stable. It was a long night. Just glad she's still here. The reply came almost right away. I'm glad, and I meant what I said. I exhaled. You don't have to keep checking on me. I know. That was it. Simple, and somehow, it stayed with me. For years, I've handled everything alone. Built that habit so deep I didn't even question it anymore. And now, suddenly, someone was there. Not pushing, just there. And I didn't know what to do with that. The next morning, I was sitting beside my mom's bed, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest, when my phone buzzed again. Adrian. But this time, it wasn't a text. It was a call. I hesitated, then stepped out into the hallway before answering. Hey, I said quietly. Hey, his voice came through, still calm, but softer than before. Have you eaten? I blinked. That wasn't what I expected. Not really. Good, he said. I frowned slightly. Good? I'm sending a car, he continued, like this was already decided. Meet me for breakfast. I actually stopped walking. Wait, what? Adrian, I can't just leave my mom. I'm not asking you to disappear for hours, he said, steady. And that was where everything paused again. Because part of me wanted to say no, and part of me didn't. 1 hour, I said, more to convince myself than him. That's it. There was a small pause on the line. Then I heard it. That quiet, almost satisfied chuckle. I'll be outside in 10. And just like that, I said yes to something I didn't plan, didn't prepare for, didn't even fully understand. I hung up and stood there for a second, staring at my phone. What am I doing? That question stayed with me all the way downstairs. The morning air hit colder than I expected, sharp enough to wake me up a little. I crossed my arms instinctively, rubbing them like it would help. I still wasn't sure why I agreed. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe it was him, the way he never pushed but somehow still got through. Or maybe I just needed a break more than I wanted to admit. A black car pulled up to the curb. Same one from last night. The driver stepped out, nodded once. Miss Brooks? I hesitated, just half a second, then nodded back and got in. The door shut behind me, with that same quiet, expensive sound. Soft leather, faint cologne. The kind of silence you only notice when everything else in your life feels loud. The city moved past the window. Fast. Indifferent. And all I could think was, what am I doing getting into a car like this, with a man like him? Right now. 15 minutes later, we stopped. The place didn't look like anywhere I'd usually go. Clean glass, polished metal. People inside dressed like they had somewhere important to be, even while eating breakfast. I stepped out slowly, and he was already there, waiting. Same suit, same calm, like he hadn't moved since I last saw him. You made it, he said. I crossed my arms without thinking. I don't remember having much of a choice. A small smile pulled at his lips. You always have a choice, Savannah. I gave him a look, but still followed him inside. That probably said more than anything I could have replied with. We were led to a booth in the back. Quieter. Away from everyone else. A waiter appeared almost immediately. The usual, Mr. Blake? I glanced at him. Of course he had a usual. Yes, Adrian said, then gestured slightly toward me. And bring her a latte. And something with actual food. I blinked. Wow, just deciding for me now? He leaned back, studying me like it was obvious. You look like you need caffeine, and something that isn't airport snacks. I opened my mouth, then closed it again, because he wasn't wrong. Fine, I muttered. But don't make a habit of it. That only made his smile a little more noticeable. When the food came, I didn't even pretend to be polite. I was hungry. Really hungry. The kind you ignore for too long until your body stops asking nicely. I took a bite. Then another. And for a second, everything else faded. After a few minutes, he spoke again. Tell me something real. I paused mid-bite. We're doing this again? Yes. Simple. Because I have a feeling you don't let people in. That landed harder than I expected. I took a sip of my coffee, stalling. Because he wasn't wrong. I used to want to be a journalist, I said finally. His brow lifted slightly. Used to. I let out a quiet breath. Yeah, used to. What happened? I shrugged a little. Not casual. Just tired. Life? I looked down at my plate. I got pregnant. Plans changed. And then it wasn't about what I wanted anymore. It was about what I had to do. I didn't look up right away. Didn't want to see his reaction. He didn't interrupt. Didn't try to fix it. Then, quietly, that doesn't mean you had to give it up. I looked at him then. Something in my chest tightened, sharp, uncomfortable. It's a little late for that, I said. He didn't agree, didn't soften it. I don't think it is. I let out a small breath. Half laugh, half something else. Easy for you to say. You probably always knew where you were going. That was when he went quiet. Really quiet. Then he leaned back slightly, picked up his coffee, took a sip, and said, "Not exactly." I looked at him, narrowing my eyes slightly. What does that mean? He set the cup down carefully. I didn't grow up with any of this, he said. No money, no connections, nothing handed to me. I blinked. That wasn't what I expected. Really? He nodded once. Small apartment in Brooklyn. My dad worked in a factory. My mom was a nurse. We had enough, but just enough. He paused. I figured out early. If I wanted something different, I had to build it myself. I stared at him for a second longer than I meant to, because suddenly, he didn't feel as untouchable as I thought. And that somehow made him even harder to ignore. I always thought guys like Adrian were born into a different world, the kind where things just worked out. Money, connections, doors opening without asking. But sitting across from him, hearing where he actually came from, it shifted something. He felt real, in a way I didn't expect. Why didn't you tell me that before? I asked. He gave that small half smile. You didn't ask. I rolled my eyes, but I didn't argue, because for the first time since meeting him, I wasn't just noticing him. I was wondering about him, who he really was, and why I suddenly cared enough to find out. Breakfast was almost over when he leaned forward slightly, his expression sharper this time. I have an idea. That alone made me tense up. I feel like I should be worried, I muttered. He ignored that, completely. You said you wanted to be a journalist. I nodded slowly. Yeah, a long time ago. What if I gave you a job? I blinked. Wait, what? Not at my main company, he added calmly. I own a media group, one of the larger independent outlets. I can get you in. My stomach dropped. Adrian. That's insane. You don't even know if I'm good enough. He didn't hesitate. I know you're capable. And I know you don't belong stuck where you are. That hit harder than I expected. Too direct. Too accurate. Why would you do that for me? I asked quietly. He didn't look away. Not even for a second. Because I believe in second chances. Silence sat between us, heavy. For years, I had convinced myself this was it. That version of me, the one who had plans, dreams, direction, she didn't exist anymore. She got replaced by someone who just survived. But sitting there, looking at him, for the first time, I wasn't completely sure that was true. You're offering me a job? I repeated, slower this time, like I needed to hear it again, to believe it. Yes, just like that. Simple, like it wasn't something that could change everything. My heart started racing, because this wasn't a small thing. This was the kind of opportunity people wait years for, and it was being handed to me. across a breakfast table, by a man I barely knew. I appreciate it, I said slowly, trying to steady myself. But I haven't written in years. I wouldn't even know where to start. Then you learn, he said. Firm. No hesitation. You're smart. You've got grit. You'll figure it out. I let out a breath that didn't feel steady. It's not that simple. It is, he said, just as steady. You're the one making it complicated. I hated that he said that. Because part of me knew he was right. But the other part, louder part, was already whispering. What if you fail? What if you're not good enough? What if you lose the only stability you have left? And then there was Noah. I have a son, I said. More firmly now. Like I needed to remind both of us. I can't just jump into something uncertain and hope it works. I need something stable. He didn't argue. Not immediately. Then quietly. What part of what you're doing now is stable? That landed. Hard. I clenched my jaw, didn't answer. I get it, he added. Softer this time. You're scared, but don't stay somewhere you've already outgrown just because it feels safe. I swallowed. Because I didn't know which scared me more. Failing. Or, actually, having a chance. And not taking it. The next few days blurred together. Hospital. Coffee. Barely sleeping. Sitting beside my mom. Watching the machines. But his words didn't leave. They stayed. In the background. Quiet. But constant. By the fourth night, I was sitting alone when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something told me not to. Hello? Is this Savannah Brooks? The voice asked. Sharp. Professional. Yes. Who is this? My name is Charlotte Grant. Editor-in-chief at Blake Media. Adrian mentioned you. My stomach flipped instantly. He did? I reviewed your background, she continued. No small talk. I don't usually follow recommendations, but I read your college work. You've got potential. I sat up straighter, without realizing. So here's the deal, she said. There's a staff writer position open. No special treatment, no shortcuts. You earn it or you don't. But if you're serious, this is your chance. My mind went blank. This wasn't hypothetical anymore. This was real. I don't even know what to say, I admitted. Say yes, she said. Flat. I let out a shaky breath. Can I think about it? You have 24 hours, she replied. After that, I move on. And then, the line went dead. I sat there, phone still in my hand, heart racing, because, for the first time in years, my future didn't feel decided anymore. And that was terrifying. For the first time in years, my future didn't feel locked anymore. And that alone was enough to keep me awake all night. The next morning, I still hadn't made a decision. I walked into my mom's hospital room with that same weight sitting in my chest. Like I was carrying two lives at once. The one I had, and the one I might step into. Morning, sweetheart, she said softly. Morning, Mom. I forced a smile. She looked at me longer than usual, like she could see straight through whatever I was trying to hide. What's on your mind? I hesitated. I hadn't told her about Adrian, or the offer. It felt too big, too unreal to say out loud. And before I could figure out how to explain any of it, there was a knock on the door. I turned, and froze. Adrian. Standing there, like he belonged, holding a simple bouquet of flowers. Nothing flashy, just thoughtful. I figured it was time I introduced myself, he said, calm like always. My mom raised an eyebrow, clearly interested. And who might you be? He stepped forward slightly. Easy. Confident. Adrian Blake. A friend of your daughter's. I could feel my mom's curiosity instantly. Well, Mr. Blake, she said with a faint smile. If you're showing up with flowers, you must be important. I wanted to disappear. He just smiled, like that didn't faze him at all. I'd like to think so. And somehow, that made her laugh. A real laugh. The kind I hadn't heard in days. And just like that, something shifted. Because whether I liked it or not, he wasn't just a stranger from a flight anymore. He was here, in my world, in my reality, and my mom already liked him. Which, honestly, made things worse. So, she said, looking between us with that playful spark she hadn't lost. Should I assume you're her boyfriend? Or do I still need to find her one? Mom, I choked. But Adrian didn't miss a beat. He leaned in slightly. I'd say we're still figuring that out. I shot him a look. He didn't even try to hide the smile. And my mom just laughed again. After a few minutes, he stood. Can we talk? I hesitated. Then nodded. We stepped into the hallway. I crossed my arms immediately, trying to regain some control. What are you doing here? Checking on you. Simple. Like it wasn't a big deal. You don't have to do that. I know. That same steady tone. But I want to. And there it was again. That thing about him that threw me off balance every time. He didn't push, but he didn't step back either. You talked to Charlotte? He asked. I nodded slowly. She called. She made an offer. And, I don't know, I admitted. It's a lot. I didn't ask for any of this. He watched me for a moment. Really watched. No, he said quietly. You didn't. Then he added, but maybe it's time you start asking. That stayed with me, long after he left. That night, I sat alone in the waiting area, phone in my hand, Charlotte's words running in circles in my head. 24 hours. Then it's gone. I stared at the screen, thinking about my mom, about Noah, about the life I'd built, and the life I never allowed myself to imagine anymore. And then, before I could talk myself out of it, I dialed. Hello? Charlotte. It's Savannah. Yes? I tightened my grip on the phone. I'll take the job. A short pause. Good. Be in my office Monday. The line went dead. And just like that, there was no going back. I sat there for a second longer, breathing, because I had just stepped into something I couldn't control. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to run from it. Monday came faster than I expected. I stood outside Blake Media, staring up at the building. Glass, steel, everything about it felt bigger than me. My stomach tightened. This didn't feel like my world, not even close. But I walked in anyway, because turning around wasn't an option anymore. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have, every second giving me time to doubt myself again. When the doors opened, Charlotte Grant was already there. Savannah. Sharp. Direct. No wasted time. Follow me. I did. The newsroom hit me all at once. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, voices overlapping, controlled chaos. This was real. This was happening. This is your desk, she said. I stopped, just stared at it. Because it didn't feel like mine yet. Not really. But it could be. And that thought was enough to make my chest tighten again. Not from fear this time, but from something I hadn't felt in years. Possibility. The noise hit me before anything else. Phones ringing, keyboards snapping fast, voices overlapping like everyone was chasing something at the same time. And somehow, I was part of it now. Charlotte didn't slow down. She walked straight through the chaos and stopped at a desk. This is yours. I just stood there for a second, because it didn't feel real. A desk, a job, a second chance I hadn't planned for. I expect you to prove yourself, she added without looking at me. Adrian might have opened the door, but if you don't deliver, you won't stay. I lifted my chin slightly, trying to steady myself. I wouldn't expect anything less. That earned me a quick smirk. Good, then start working. And just like that, I wasn't the woman barely getting by anymore. At least, not here. A few hours later, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Adrian. How's the first day? I let out a small breath before typing back. Your editor is terrifying. A reply came, almost instantly. That's why she's the best. I glanced around the room, then typed again. I think I might die. You won't. You're tougher than you think. I stared at that for a second longer than I should have. Something about it, simple as it was, stayed with me. Then another message popped up. Dinner tonight. You owe me. I rolled my eyes, even though he couldn't see it. Oh, so now I owe you? Absolutely. I hesitated, then typed. One dinner. That's it. We'll see. I shook my head slightly, because deep down, I already knew. Nothing about him was ever just one thing. That night, I sat across from him again, staring at a menu that definitely cost more than I was comfortable admitting. I had made one condition: no over-the-top fancy place. And technically, he listened. No chandeliers, no white tablecloths. But still, polished wood, low lighting, skyline, stretching out behind the glass like something out of a movie. Not my world. Not even close. You're tense, he said, taking a slow sip of his drink. I looked up. You think? A small smile. Relax, it's just dinner. Dinner with a man who casually changes my life in between meetings. I shot back. Yeah, no pressure. He laughed softly, setting his glass down. Would it help if I said I'm just a guy eating steak? I rolled my eyes. Not even a little. But somehow, I felt myself loosening up anyway. Maybe it was the wine. Or maybe it was the way he listened. Not interrupting. Not rushing. Just there. Like, what I said actually mattered. So, I said after a while, what do you do when you're not running everything? He smirked slightly. Boxing. I blinked. You? Boxing? Yeah. He shrugged lightly. Keeps my head clear, and hitting something after a long day helps. I pictured it for a second. Him. Controlled. Precise. In a ring. It didn't not make sense. Okay. I can see that, I said quietly, looking away a little too fast. What? He caught it immediately. Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Because somewhere, in that moment, I realized something uncomfortable. This wasn't just curiosity anymore, and that made it dangerous. By the time dinner ended, he leaned forward slightly. You're staying in New York? For now, I said. Why? His eyes didn't move. Because I want to see you again. My breath caught. Adrian, I'm not asking for anything serious, he said calmly. I just like being around you. That made it worse. Because, if he had made it complicated, I could have walked away. But this was simple. And simple is harder to run from. I don't know if that's a good idea, I admitted. Why? I hesitated, then said it anyway. Because I don't fit into your world. He tilted his head slightly. Who says I want you to? That stopped me. Completely. Because he wasn't asking me to change. He wasn't offering anything complicated. Just time. And somehow, that scared me more than anything else. Later that night, I sat on my couch, phone in my hand, his message still sitting there. Dinner was good, let's do it again. I stared at it. I should ignore it. I should walk away now, before this turned into something I couldn't control. Before I got used to him, before it started to matter. But instead, my fingers moved anyway, and that was the part I didn't know how to stop. Looking back, that text was the moment I should have slowed down, maybe even walked away. But I didn't. And that's the part that still gets to me. I replied anyway, simple, casual, like it didn't mean anything. But somewhere in my chest, I already knew I was stepping into something I wouldn't be able to control later. That whole week blurred together. Not in a dramatic way. Just the kind of exhaustion that sits behind your eyes and never really leaves. Mornings started with burnt coffee. I kept forgetting to drink. Afternoons, buried under edits, deadlines, Charlotte calling my name without raising her voice but somehow still making my stomach tighten. I kept telling myself the same thing over and over. Earn it. Don't waste this. Don't let this slip away. At night, everything slowed down. Hospital lights too bright, air too cold. My mom asleep more than awake. Aunt Marie trying to act strong in that quiet way that only makes things feel heavier. And me, sitting there, scrolling through my phone sometimes just to avoid thinking too much. Except it never worked. Because somehow, I always ended up thinking about him. Adrian had this way of staying present without demanding anything. A message here, a check-in there, like it took him no effort at all. Still alive in that newsroom? Barely. You sound like you need saving. Don't say dinner, lunch. That one made me smile, and I hated that it did. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, thumb hovering, but I didn't reply, because every time I thought about seeing him again, that quiet voice in my head came back. This isn't your world. You don't belong there. Don't make this harder than it already is. The problem was, I wasn't sure I wanted to listen anymore. A few days later, I stepped out of the hospital, into cold air that felt sharper than usual. My phone buzzed again. Not a text this time. A call. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Hey, hey. His voice was steady as always, but softer this time. How's your mom? I leaned against the wall outside, watching people pass like they were all heading somewhere that made sense. Stable. I guess that's the best we've got right now. He didn't respond immediately. Then quietly. I know you don't like asking for help. I cut him off gently. Adrian, I mean it, Savannah. I know, and I appreciate it. I really do. I exhaled slowly. But I'm fine. A small pause, then a low, almost amused sound. You say that like it's a habit. Because it is. Right. I could hear it. He didn't believe me. And weirdly, that didn't annoy me as much as it should have. Then. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. Come with me this weekend. I straightened slightly. To what? Charity gala. He said it like he was suggesting coffee. I need a date. I let out a short breath, half laugh, half disbelief. Adrian, before you say no. He cut in smoothly, already knowing me better than he should. One night, good food, open bar, and a dress you'd never buy for yourself. I closed my eyes for a second, because he wasn't easy. You don't really hear no, do you? Not when I know you're thinking, yes. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see it. I'll think about it. Good. That was it. No pressure, no push, just confidence. I'll have something sent over. Saturday. And then the line went dead. I stared at my phone like it might explain what just happened. What am I doing? 2 days later, a box showed up at my door. Heavy, expensive looking, in a way that made me hesitate before even touching it. I stood there longer than I should have, because technically, I hadn't said yes. Not clearly, not out loud. But Adrian didn't really wait for clear answers. When I finally opened it, I forgot to breathe. The dress was deep navy, almost black, until the light caught it. Tiny details stitched in that shimmered when it moved. Soft fabric that felt too expensive for someone like me to even hold. It wasn't just beautiful. It felt intentional, like he saw something in me I hadn't let myself see in years. And that was what made it dangerous. Because he didn't force anything. He just made it easy to want more. By the time Saturday came, I was standing outside that ballroom with my heart beating louder than it should, fingers cold, even though I wasn't cold. Inside was exactly what I expected. And still, too much. Glass, light, polished floors. People who moved like they had never once questioned where they belonged. Laughter that sounded effortless. Dresses that probably cost more than everything I owned combined. I almost turned around. I really did. For 1 second. I thought about leaving. Because this wasn't my world. And every part of me knew it. Then I saw him. Standing near the bar in a black tux, like the room had been built around him. Calm. Controlled. Completely at ease. In a way I couldn't fake even if I tried. His eyes found me immediately. And something shifted. Subtle. But real. I swallowed. My grip tightening slightly, because right then, it hit me. I should have said no. I should have kept things simple. But I didn't. And now, as he started walking toward me with that steady, certain confidence, I had this quiet, sinking feeling that whatever this was, it was already too late to step back from it. The first time he looked at me like that, I should have known something wasn't as simple as it felt. But I didn't. I just stood there, letting myself believe this was still under control. You look! Adrian paused for half a second, his eyes moving over me in a way that made my chest tighten. Stunning. I swallowed. Because it wasn't just a compliment. It was the way he said it. Calm. Certain. Like he meant more than he was saying. And that was the problem. He wasn't dangerous in the way people usually think. He was dangerous because he made everything feel easy, even the things that should have scared me. This is insane, I muttered under my breath. A little, he admitted, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. But you're here, so I must be doing something right. I shook my head, trying to steady myself. Remind me why I said yes to this again. Because you like being around me, he said without hesitation, like it was obvious. I let out a small scoff. Keep telling yourself that. He laughed. Low, easy, and annoyingly real. And just like that, the tension in my shoulders eased. Which, honestly, made me trust this even less. The night moved around us, people talking, glasses clinking, soft music somewhere in the background. I watched him work the room without trying. The way he shifted conversations made people feel seen, like they mattered. It hit me quietly. He didn't chase attention. It followed him. You're staring. His voice pulled me back. I was just thinking. I took a sip of champagne, buying myself a second. How exhausting it must be to be you. He smirked slightly. Careful. You almost sound like you care. I rolled my eyes. Don't get used to it. He leaned in just enough that his voice dropped. Meant only for me. Too late. My breath caught. Not because of what he said, because for a second, everything else faded. The noise, the people, the room, all of it. Gone. And that scared me more than anything else that night. I needed air. I excused myself and walked toward the restroom, heels clicking a little too loud against the floor. That's when I heard it. Savannah Brooks, right? I froze for half a second, then turned. She was standing there like she had been waiting. Red dress, sharp eyes, a smile that didn't reach them. Yes, I said carefully. She tilted her head slightly, studying me in a way that felt deliberate. I'm surprised Adrian brought you here, she said lightly. My stomach tightened. I'm sorry. Do we know each other? Her smile didn't change. Vanessa Clark. She paused just long enough. And I know Adrian very well. Something in my chest dropped. Quietly. But fast. Let me guess, she continued, almost amused. He hasn't told you about me. I didn't answer right away. Because the worst part wasn't what she said. It was the feeling that she might be right. When I found Adrian again, he was mid-conversation. But the second he saw my face, everything shifted. What happened? No hesitation. No pretending. Just direct. He guided me toward a quieter corner before I could even answer. I crossed my arms, holding on to something solid. "Who is Vanessa Clark?" His jaw tightened. That was enough. "She's not just someone from the party, is she?" He exhaled slowly, running a hand over the back of his neck. "She's my ex-fiancée." I stared at him. "Your what?" "It was a long time ago," he said carefully. "And you didn't think that was worth mentioning?" He looked at me, steady. "She's not important." I let out a short breath. "She seemed pretty important when she was warning me about you." His expression darkened slightly. "What did she say?" I hesitated, then answered anyway. "That you don't mix things. That you keep people separate." His jaw flexed. "That sounds like her." I met his eyes. "Then tell me honestly." My voice came out quieter than I expected. "Am I stepping into something I shouldn't?" He didn't look away. Not even for a second. "No." Simple. Firm. Too clean. And that was the problem. Because I wasn't sure if I believed him. The ride back was quiet. Not comfortable quiet. Heavy quiet. He didn't push. Didn't explain. And I didn't ask again. But I felt it. Something had shifted. Later that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Her voice, his face. That pause before he answered. What if she was right? What if I was just another part of his life he hadn't decided where to place yet? My phone buzzed beside me. "Adrian. Can't sleep either?" I stared at the screen for a second, then typed back anyway. "Too much on my mind. I'll take the blame for that." I hesitated, fingers hovering. Then, I typed the question I shouldn't have asked. "Am I making a mistake?" There was a pause. Longer than before. Then, "No." I swallowed. "Are you sure?" Another pause. Then, "Ask me that again, in person." My chest tightened slightly, because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't over. Not even close. I knew something was wrong before he said a word. The message had been simple. "Come by my office." Nothing dramatic. But the second I stepped inside, I felt it. The air was off. He was standing by the window with his hands in his pockets, too still, too quiet, not like himself. "Savannah." Just my name, and somehow that was enough to make my stomach tighten. "What happened?" I asked, already bracing myself. He looked at me for a second, then said it plain. Vanessa wasn't wrong. I felt that drop straight into my chest. "So it's true," I said carefully. "You do keep parts of your life separate." He exhaled slowly and ran a hand through his hair. The kind of movement people make when they know they're about to say something they won't be able to take back. "I used to," he said. "With Vanessa. With everyone, if I'm being honest. It was easier that way." He looked back at me then. Really looked. "But I don't want to do that with you." My heart started pounding so hard it almost made me angry. Because this was exactly the kind of thing that could break me if I let it. I could have walked out. I could have told him it was too late, that I didn't trust him enough, that I wasn't built for this kind of risk. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped closer. "Then prove it." He didn't move right away, just held my gaze. "How?" My throat felt tight, but I said it anyway. "Let me in." The room went quiet after that. Not awkward. Just full. Then he reached up and tucked a loose piece of hair behind my ear so gently it almost made me forget to breathe. "All right," he said softly. "Let's try it your way." And that should have made me feel better. But it didn't. Not completely. Because the truth is, sometimes the thing you want most is also the thing that scares you the hardest. Adrian was the kind of man who liked control. You could feel that even when he wasn't saying anything. Everything in his life had edges, structure, distance where he wanted it. He didn't leave room to mess. And me, I wasn't mess in a loud way, but I was still mess. in the way real life is, in the way people with kids and bills and complicated pasts are never clean or simple. And somehow, for some reason, he wasn't backing away from that. Okay, he said after a moment, voice lower now, steadier. No more walls. I studied him, because I needed to know if he was just saying the right thing. You mean that? Yes. I folded my arms without thinking. Not defensive exactly, more like I needed something to hold on to. Then start with Vanessa. That one landed. He looked away for the first time since I walked in, jaw tightening slightly. Of course you'd go straight there. She came straight to me, I said. Fair point. He rubbed his hand along his jaw and stayed quiet for a second, then finally spoke. It ended years ago, but not cleanly. I waited. She didn't take it well. I raised a brow. Did you break her heart? He let out a short, dry laugh. Not because it was funny, more because the answer wasn't simple. I think she broke her own version of it. I frowned. What does that even mean? He hesitated. And that mattered. Because Adrian didn't strike me as someone who hesitated often. Vanessa and I were never what people thought we were, he said. It looked real from the outside, but it was more arrangement than relationship. Our families wanted it. Our worlds fit on paper. For a while, that felt like enough. He stopped there for a second, and when he spoke again, his voice changed. Not much, just enough. Until I realized I couldn't give her what she wanted from me. Something in me softened at that. Not because I felt sorry for him, but because, suddenly, Vanessa made more sense. He wasn't just talking about an ex, he was talking about the version of himself he had lived as for years. The polished one, the controlled one, the one who never let anything get too close. And me? I asked quietly. That was the question underneath all of it anyway. What am I to you? Really? He turned back to me slowly. And when he answered, there wasn't even a second of hesitation. You're the one thing I didn't plan for. I swallowed hard. That should have felt good. Maybe even romantic. Instead, it scared the hell out of me. Because unexpected things are beautiful right up until they wreck your life. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, with his words still stuck in my head. The one thing I didn't plan for. I kept replaying it, turning it around, trying to decide whether it was honest or dangerous or both. It should have made me feel chosen. Instead, it made me feel exposed, like I was standing somewhere high with no railing and pretending that counted as freedom. My phone buzzed in my hand. Adrian, can I see you? I stared at the screen. Every sensible part of me said no. No, because it was too fast. No, because I was already too far in. No, because men like him didn't fall apart the same way people like me did when things went wrong. And still, I didn't put the phone down. Because that was the truth I was having the hardest time with. Part of me wanted to see him just as badly as I wanted to protect myself from him. There was a moment, right before everything crossed the line, where I could have stopped, where I could have said this was too much, too fast, too risky. But I didn't. I typed yeah. And just like that, I knew I wasn't pulling back anymore. He showed up less than 20 minutes later. No warning, no hesitation, like he had already decided I was worth the drive. He didn't wait at the door. Didn't ask permission. He stepped inside, looked at me once, and closed the distance between us like it had always been there. I don't do this, he said quietly. I don't chase people. My heart was already beating too fast. Then why are you here? He exhaled, like the truth wasn't something he said often. Because I can't stay away from you. And then, he kissed me. Not slow, not careful. It wasn't about control anymore. It was everything we didn't say. Everything we held back since that flight. Everything that kept building no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. And for the first time in a long time, I stopped thinking. I stopped calculating. I stopped protecting myself. I just let it happen. I let myself feel something again. I let myself fall. The next morning, sunlight hit my face before I even opened my eyes. And then I noticed it. Not him, but the trace of him. The scent still on the sheets. The warmth that hadn't fully left. Like something unfinished. I blinked, trying to catch up with reality. And then it all came back. The way he had me pressed gently against the door. Not rough, not careless, just certain. The way he said my name. Like it meant something. We hadn't crossed that final line. But somehow, everything still felt different. Deeper, more real. At some point we ended up on the couch, talking. About work, about Noah, about who he used to be, and who he wasn't sure he knew how to become. And somewhere in between, we fell asleep. Like people who didn't plan it. Like people who forgot they weren't supposed to fit this easily. I sat up fast when I realized I was alone. That old feeling hit immediately. Did he leave? Because people always leave. Eventually. But then, coffee. I smelled it before I saw him, and a second later he walked back in. Sleeves slightly rolled, shirt undone just enough to make him look human. Not untouchable. 2 cups in his hands like it was the most normal thing in the world. "You're up," he said, handing me one. I stared at him. "You made coffee?" He smirked. "I can survive on my own." I laughed. And that scared me more than anything else. Because it felt easy. Too easy. He sat beside me, quiet for a second, then asked, "You gonna run?" I didn't even think about it. No. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't something small anymore. The weeks after that blurred together. We weren't officially together, but we weren't nothing either. We were something in between. Late night calls, quick coffees before work, dinners that stretched into hours, moments that felt bigger than they should. And it wasn't just physical. That would have been easier. It was him, the way he listened, like what I said actually mattered. The way he looked at me, like he was trying to understand me. The way he didn't push, but somehow never let go either. I had spent years surviving, just getting through the day, making sure Noah was okay, making sure the bills got paid. I forgot what it felt like to actually live something. And suddenly, I was, and that terrified me. Because, when you've been surviving that long, feeling alive again feels unstable, like it could disappear just as fast as it came. And then, everything shifted. I was at work when my phone lit up. Ryan. My stomach dropped instantly. I hadn't heard from him in months. Not like this. Something was wrong. I stepped outside before answering. "Ryan?" "Savannah." His voice was tight, controlled. That alone was enough. "We need to talk." My pulse spiked. "About what?" "Is it Noah?" Silence. The kind that makes your mind go straight to the worst place. "What's going on?" He exhaled. "I'll tell you tonight." And then he hung up. Just like that. I stood there, phone still in my hand, heart racing. And before I could think, I texted Adrian. "I need to see you." His reply came almost instantly. "Tell me where." And deep down, I knew. This wasn't just about Ryan anymore. Whatever was coming next was going to change everything. Looking back now, I think the hardest part wasn't falling for someone like him. It was realizing how long I had been protecting myself. So long that I forgot how to tell the difference between real danger and something that just felt unfamiliar. Because not everything that scares you is meant to break you, and not everything safe is where you're meant to stay. Sometimes, you don't get certainty. You just get a moment. And a choice. And maybe, that's where everything begins. This story is inspired by real-life situations, but all characters and details have been recreated using AI to protect privacy and enhance storytelling. If this story made you feel something, even just a little, take a second to like the video. And if you want to see what happens next, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next part. And I really want to know, if you were in my place, would you walk away or stay and see where it leads?